Kim Knight suddenly and unexpectedly lost her husband when he was only 56 years old. And in one day, she went from planning the future with her best friend to planning a funeral. Thankfully, the unpredictable road of grief and difficult challenges, though, led to the promise of new growth. And we're here today with Kim. Good to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
The widow's might, M-I-G-H-T. If you can just kind of tell us what happened and what those moments were like when something completely unexpected and so grave happened.
It was very unexpected, Stephan. My husband went to the bank to open a corporate checking account. We had just purchased a new franchise business, and he had traveled a lot in his corporate life, and I worried a lot about maybe a plane going down or a car wreck, but you never think about somebody going to the bank, and he actually suffered an aneurysm in his aorta while at the bank.
And there was no indications that...
Not at all.
Anything like that. Wow. So, when you got that news, what was going through your heart, through your mind, and the derailment of that kind of event?
You never really can prepare for that. I've spoken to a lot of widows over this time, and even people who knew that their husband was ill for a long time. You just are never really ready to get that news. And in my case, it was especially shocking. He was 56, he was at the bank. I wasn't expecting it. But I think it's something that kind of sets the world on a different axis, if you will. My life just completely changed. Not only was he my husband, and we did have a really good marriage, and I was really grateful for that, but I worked for him for 20 years, and we were just getting ready to start a business. So really, all of my daylight hours changed. I went from being married and working with my husband to a widow and not having a job at the time.
So what are some of the topics that you cover? Because I'd imagine now, as you talk to other women and men, I'd imagine, who are going through this or who have been through the journey of grief and loss, what are some of the topics and what are some of the don'ts that you should not do when this happens?
Well, that's a terrific question, and there's a lot of topics. A lot of things happen fast.
Okay.
You know, when you're not expecting a death in your family, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made right now. Funeral arrangements and having people fly in, and financial things happen. I wonder what people do when their finances are a little bit tenuous and there's a lot of expenses suddenly. I always encourage people now, if you haven't had that chat with your spouse, you need to plan for this stuff. And people don't want to talk about it. A lot of people have told me I don't even like to say the word widow. Somebody told me yesterday they didn't want to read my book because of what the topic was, and I totally get that. A few don'ts, I think, are making really radical, life-changing decisions right away. Everybody tells you don't do anything the first year, and honestly, that's not bad advice.
Now, again, widow's might, M-I-G-H-T, the strength that it took for you to kind of move off of this earth-shattering and axis-moving event, as you so said, where did that strength come from, and how did you kind of find it?
I'm really, really fortunate. I have a great support base, great family, lots of good friends. I was very heavily involved at my church. And
you had a good group, a network around you.
I had a great network, and that's so important. And I really encourage people, when someone in your circle faces this, many times people don't know what to say. They're uncomfortable about the situation. Your friends might fall away a little bit, and I really encourage people, when this does happen to someone that you know, stay there and stick with them. One lady that I know, kind of peripherally really, sent me a card every single week for a year telling me that she was thinking about me. And I just had a great support system, great faith walk. Somebody asked me once, are you angry at God about this? And fortunately, I'm one of those people, I wasn't angry at God. I felt like God was there the whole time, and it was as good a situation as it could be.
Okay, so tell us about some of those kind of conversations that you had with God, though. I mean, was there ever a time when you said, why me, why now? and address that issue about we should never question God.
Oh, I think you should question God. And I gave a sermon at a small church in my hometown yesterday, and that was kind of the story. I think if you are angry with God about this, and a lot of people do blame God because there really isn't anybody else to go to in this situation, take it to God because God can handle it. Jesus was mad at God. Job was mad at God. A lot of people in the Bible that are far better people than I am have been mad at God. And I think it's a great place to take that to God and not turn away from God at that time. Fortunately, I wasn't mad. My minister was at the hospital when all this was happening. He goes, "You seem so calm." I said, "I know. I can't tell if it's the peace that passes all understanding or the calm before the storm." But I've been really grateful to be able to kind of deal with it.
Now, the subtitle is Embracing Life After the Loss of Your Spouse. So, Kim, it seems like the moment that this all happened, there was some providential presence and God's peace there, but things still change. So
Absolutely.
what has changed in your life? Well, how have you seen maybe the hand of God continue to work in you, with you, and through you?
A lot of things have changed. Probably the biggest change in my life was that I moved from Arizona, where I had a wonderful life and a great neighborhood and a really interesting journey at my church there. But I kind of, at the time that my husband died, decided by choice that I was going to take on the role of the perfect widow. I don't know why I should.
What does that mean?
Yes.
Oh gosh, I was so good at being a widow. I was calm. I went to church every Sunday. I showed up when asked to. And I wanted people to think that I could deal with it well for two reasons. I wanted to honor my husband. He was a great guy. And I also wanted for people to think that I had my faith walk was in place. And I do want to say, I do think that's false thinking on my part. I don't really recommend doing that, but I pretended to be happy and in control for a year. And honestly, at the end of the year, I felt like I was happier. It was a better situation. But I did feel like I needed to move to a new place to kind of just have a new life. And I moved to where my children live. And it's been awesome.
Are you dating or waiting, or is that a personal question?
I'm doing both of those things. My next book may be about dating at age 60. I don't recommend it. Actually, I have dated some. I've met people through friends. I have dated a little bit online. It really might be a book. It's been kind of a crazy experience. It's really interesting because you tend to compare to what you had.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, comparing is bad because, I had a great marriage for 22 years. I worked for my husband. We really liked and respected each other. So to kind of move on and try to make that connection now, and really, honestly, my experience is you get about 5 minutes over coffee to make a good first impression. And I've had a couple second dates. We'll see how, I'll be back and let you know how that goes.
Inevitably and questionably, there's good days and bad days.
Yes, there
and
are.
So maybe if you could take us through what you learned in each of those kinds of days when you were walking this road alone.
Bad days come to everybody. When I was married to my husband, I still had bad days. And I think you just need to kind of put that in perspective. I really encourage, the whole message of the book is that time is a precious gift. And there were a lot of days I'm sure that you've had where tiny things that your husband or your spouse does kind of annoy you a little bit. I worked for my husband for 20 years. There were plenty of those days. I don't really sweat that small stuff anymore. That has been a huge change for me. When I'm with you, I'm with you. I say in my book, I hug people hello, I kiss them goodbye, I tell them how I feel about them, and I'm really just trying to enjoy the journey.
You also dealt with guilt. Why were you guilty?
So many people deal with guilt, and there's absolutely no reason to be guilty. But there's a quote in the book from Stephen Hawking that the human capacity for guilt is so great that we find ways to be guilty about things that we're really not responsible for. And if you talk to people, you could say to them, Kim, you had nothing to do with that. You don't need to be guilty. But somehow we internalize that. I think it's kind of a way of maybe making sense of it, or there's nobody to blame, so maybe it's somehow I'm at fault. But I think guilt is a very useless emotion.
We've got just 30 seconds left, Kim, and for someone watching today that is just going through or recently has gone through a terrible loss, what would your advice or word of encouragement be to them?
My word of encouragement is that really, I hate to say this, it sounds kind of trite, but things do get better. But I do think my message is that you're responsible in some part for your own happiness, and you need to make choices that are positive for you. I've talked to a million people that waited 1 year, 9 years, 20 years before they moved on. I just got a note from a friend recently. She said, I still feel stuck in the past and my husband's been dead for 20 years. And what a waste that is, and not a tribute. My husband would be furious with me if he thought I was wasting the days I have left.
Didn't move on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kim Knight, our guest today. And to connect with Kim and pick up a copy of Widow's Might, you can go to harvest-tv.com. Easy way to link back to her Facebook page from there. Coming up later, Pastor Mark Lance with today's motivational message. But up next, Brian Bush, the latest news from Israel. We'll be right back.